Okay, good evening. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Warren Planning Board, Monday, March 27th, 6:30. Those present, Matt Atwood, Brett Bobine, Fred Massey, Mike Gerhart, Jim Lefferts, Ashley Medeiros and Tyler Dixon had indicated they would not be able to attend. That's an excused absence. Are we missing anybody else?
I don't think so.
That's it.
That's everything.
That's a small. Oh, yeah, but Jim is an alternate and he's been
That's fine.
in recovery. So we do have a quorum. The first order of business is appointment of a secretary. Do you want to introduce yourself, Haley? Or?
I'm Haley Square, work in the clerk's office, and I would like to volunteer. Return to the planning board, if you guys
Great.
have me.
Oh, well. Haley has been terrific in terms of working with me in the past at the town hall, and we've had some discussions already about how we handle meeting minutes and all that, and so she's more than qualified for this position. I'd make a motion to appoint Haley as the secretary of the planning board. I could have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Crickets chirping. The approval of the minutes, 12:15 and 2:27. For the I don't have those in front of me.
Pretty long.
Were there any questions about those? To clarify before we begin the discussion, the minutes for the 119, 113 Water Street was included the decision or elements of the decision as best as Maya, again, who was filling in at the time, could present that information. We also have a transcript of that meeting. Allison and the solicitor's office are going to put together the decision. They're waiting for the transcript to ensure that the information that appears in the decision is actually what occurred. And it's fairly difficult. We're not going to have our secretary write down everything that everyone says in the future. I mean, to me, meeting minutes for the most part are bullet points about what happened, and then a decision separately comes from that. I'm sorry, oh, okay. So this was an unusual situation. Ben, I think, found it helpful to have Maya's longer minutes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the decision as written in the minutes will be what the actual decision is. So that still has to be written. We'll get a chance to look at that. I think in a case like this, where it's such a controversial issue and we spent such a long time on it, I think it's important for all of us to take a look at that. And we anticipate once the transcript is done, so we're looking at probably 2 or 3 weeks, reasonably. And if it takes longer, I'll let you know. But that was the reason for the meeting minutes in that particular case being a lot longer than we're used to seeing. And so
Are we passing these then? Or we're waiting? For
yeah, I mean, I think we could pass them at this point, or
If the board members had enough time to review in detail, we agree with what was said again, it's just a record of what was said, motions, actions, positions. If they're accurate, then I have no problem, although they're lucky in terms of recording a lot of quotes, etc. If the board is comfortable with the content, then certainly be appropriate to motion at this.
Well, as I noted, one of my concerns was, Ashley Maderos noted that there was no off-street parking if those houses were restored, and that's just not the case. My understanding is that if those two buildings were restored, there would be ample parking off-street for any of those residences. So, that, that's the kind of detail that I'm a little concerned about, because that, to me, I don't agree with it, so I don't see this, but it was said.
It was said,
In the
that's,
meeting.
that's exactly what it is. The minutes is, basically the record of what was said, what was done, all motions, how people voted.
So. I guess I feel like we're having two very related conversations. One, how minutes should be kept generally, and then separately but connectedly, whether we approve of these minutes that we've been presented with. So first, very quickly, I'll just address that I have reviewed the minutes. I generally agree with them, with the exception I just found a typo on page 11 regarding the reasons that I put on the record for my approval of the plan. Under letter D, almost to the top of the page, there's no confident evidence in the record. The word confident should be competent. So that's just a typo. And then just generally as a suggestion, it would be helpful if these documents had page numbers in the footer of the document, especially with the longer the longer document. It's easier to keep track of, especially if you print this stuff off and then you've just got, it's hard to line up page numbers, just, more helpful that way. I have some, I would be comfortable approving them. I understand that your concern, Mr. Chair, but as a matter of law, this is not the decision. We would see a decision separately, so this is just a record of what happened.
Right, and that's what I was.
Yeah, and so I'm not concerned that this is going to become
Correct.
the decision.
So, but I do have a question. Do these have any relevance if this goes forward? Do
This
the
is
minutes?
The minutes are the formal record of this board, exactly what happened, what was said, what was done, what actions were taken, what motions, comment from the public, comment from the board. It becomes a formal record. Now, we use the minutes, once approved, in addition to the transcript, in addition to the file, in addition to the comprehensive plan, to formulate the decision based on what was talked about and what was approved or denied that night. So it's one component of what we use to draft a decision for the board.
So, but the real relevant piece of information is the decision itself. These are just
Correct.
supporting documents to that.
As Brett indicated, that's just what one member stated that is accurately put in the.
If it's gonna be in the minutes, I'd like it to be accurate, that's all. And I'm not concerned that this is.
In the future, I think we're gonna maybe summarize the minutes.
Yeah.
In terms of making it more compact.
And I can share, I've got some guidance on best practices for board minutes that we just used in another board I'm on, that sort of sets forth some guidance about what to include, what not to include. And like you said, so for example, this is a sort of a truncated record of what actually occurred, what we voted on, who voted, members present, not present, when the meeting started and began, etc. Some things it shouldn't include are like statements of opinions or editorial sort of comments that we make. That's not a record of a decision. And certainly it gets to a point where it's too detailed and just not helpful.
Right.
So I'll share that with the board later
Sure.
for your
Great.
consideration.
In fact, Rhode Island General Law sets forth exactly
Yeah.
what should be or is required in the minutes.
Right.
And in fact, if there's too little, it can be problematic. If
Yeah.
there's too much, it can also be problematic.
Right. Good. Well,
So actually, I just have one quick comment. There's a comment in there that this matter isn't consistent with the comprehensive plan. There isn't a lot of detail about where it's at variance with the plan. I've done some research. I'll give that to the solicitor and he can use it as he
Whose
wishes
comment? Where?
in the meeting minutes,
in the minutes.
Whose Whose comment was it? Where can I look? If you're,
It's just in the body of it. Says it's not consistent with the proposal isn't consistent with the plan.
I think that was later made, there were points made specific to the comprehensive plan, because I remember saying it, there were a number of points
Yes,
within the comprehensive plan. And again, this is one of the problems with, where there may be some discrepancy between the transcript and the meeting minutes, because it wasn't, we were pretty detailed in terms of.
so that I don't think we have to reflect that in the minutes if it's just source material for you.
Correct. In the future, certainly we can compact it and kind of address exactly what needs to be there, what's important, what's not important, or commentary, etc. But before you, if you agree, that's what was done, said, and feel confident in terms of the representation, then it's ready for a vote.
Okay, thank you.
So vote to approve the minutes from 12:15 and 2:27 as amended.
Well, I have to abstain from 12:15 because I wasn't here, so.
Okay, let's do 12:15 first with Mike recusing himself. Motion to approve, second,
second,
all in favor?
aye.
Aye. Okay, and 2:27, which was the 119 meeting, motion to approve
As amended,
as amended. Second,
second,
all in favor?
aye.
Okay. Thanks, and again, this is something that moving forward. It's a good idea if we can get these earlier. That gives us more time to think about it and, not feel like we're rushed, but again, I think brevity is key here. At the same time, I hear what you're saying, Ben, that we don't want to make it so short that it leaves something out. It's just that I've counted on meeting minutes in the past for legal reasons, and it doesn't have standing. For example, we had a development that was put in, and it was made clear at the meeting that we would have a buffer zone around it, and the people are now clear cutting all the way out, and the town doesn't really have the kind of strength that it should have had that been built into the decision.
Right, because we didn't write a decision in that particular case that included that.
Exactly.
Right. So that can be rectified with a proper decision.
Right.
Instead of relying on minutes.
Yeah.
And based on what the board recommended to the town, with projects such as this, now we have a stenographer available to have an accurate record of what's done that night.
Great. So we're here to review and discuss the draft material for the housing element. Starting with the goals. The couple of prefatory comments. The Warren Comprehensive Plan was built in large part around the market to Medicom concept. Statewide planning has indicated concerns about that, about a hyper focus on that as the central construct of the comprehensive plan, which doesn't mean that we take out market to Medicom, but that we need to bolster that with further information.
Did they issue a written comment regarding that, or?
Allison?
Yeah, so several months back, I don't have forget what month it was, but we had submitted last year 3 elements that had been drafted to start the process of statewide planning, reviewing the elements. That's what they encourage now. You can send it up in sections and then continue working on it while they review and provide written comments. So we did receive written comments on those 3 sections, and we did have a meeting via Zoom, Bob and I, last year with a couple members of staff at statewide planning who reviewed the plan. So that was generally their concern with you know, because it was the approach that the town was taking last year was trying to really focus on market to Metacom and everything, how it interrelates with all the elements. And so, I mean, I think that can still be achieved, but just making sure that every requirement obviously is met, but also just generally not wanting to exclude other areas of town or other important, you know, issues and policies. So, I mean, we have specific comments, and I don't know if that was shared with you last year, the letter, but I started addressing what they felt were deficiencies in those several drafts. And then now that, you know, the board, it's good tonight, we're finally able to kind of dive back in, because there was a lot of progress made, all the mapping, and, you know, there's at least maybe 5 elements drafted, that we can now kind of try to finish up those draft elements and make sure we're more comprehensive in our comprehensive plan and meet all the requirements and start sending those drafts back to statewide planning for
Sure, so,
comments.
yeah, it's just been some time since we've all obviously,
Right. I know,
We're
I had to
dealing with
look,
other
it's been
things,
months and
so-
months
Oh, yeah.
trying to find out where we left off.
Well, that's right. I wanted to, you know, this, we felt, Allison and I, housing was a way of kind of illustrating what we're talking about here. If you look at the goals on housing,
sorry, Fred, can you just, sorry to interrupt, just to double check, this document we were provided with for this meeting, the one that's dated the 21st, is the text that's in red, is that what's different from the previous version we received, or?
Is anything in, it's dated March 24th, right?
March
On the top, right?
The file name is the 24th, but the watermark on the top. right
Yeah.
is-
Oh, mine says 24 on my water.
Yeah,
Oh,
it says
okay, the other
first
page is
page,
20.
yeah.
Okay, the first page is 24, the other pages are 25. Yeah, it's 8 pages. It's the draft housing element. There might be some, you haven't seen this yet.
Okay.
So, the red just might be my notes and not text that's intended to be part of the.
So this is
final
the first
draft.
time we've seen.
Right,
The housing.
there were, I mean, you have, Bob had started a draft, and then I had made some comments and and then in looking at it again, I did change quite a bit and, added quite a bit. I noticed that when I was going through the draft that had been prepared, it was, the content was this report that was Town of Warren Trends and Housing Report that Housing Works RI had prepared. So there's a lot of, you know, good data and analysis in here. So definitely a lot of this fulfills the requirements for the comprehensive plan in providing that housing profile and analysis of the data. So, but I think maybe we just keep it, I guess it's up to the board what the approach is, maybe just include this document as part of the comp plan versus cutting and pasting it in, or I just was trying to maybe not redo it all and it's all here and not, but those tables are already done in this.
I guess my reading of that is if the statewide planning people will just allow you to include it.
Yeah, I mean, you
That's
can,
clearly a
as
better
an
way to go.
appendix, I mean, we, you know, there are definitely communities do that, you know, you include other.
Yeah, you
things
can
like your
cite to it in the
drainage
appendix,
Plan, your other documents, relevant reports, you can include it as an appendix, so,
right?
or we pull out, or we kind of pull out what we want of this report and put it into.
Yeah, the citations to an appendix is fine, so long as it's clear in the body of the element. What is being asserted from the, you know, what's being asserted from the document, like why is it relevant, what we're doing, what are we using that information for, right? Not just see a report, right? We want to say. exactly-
Right, and yeah, I mean, so in the introduction here, I explained, introduced the document, you know, that it was. Here. Yeah, in 2022, the town of Warren contracted with Housing Works RI to prepare a report entitled Town of Warren Trends and Housing Report. This document includes research and analysis of available local housing data. This document is included as part of this comprehensive plan as fulfillment of the analysis of existing and forecasting housing.
Okay.
needs.
so, to take this from the start, the goals, that we, in this document, March 24th, March 21st. Is, something of a hyper focus on affordable and attainable housing. And the last note is ensure new residential development is designed in a way that minimizes impact on natural, historic, and scenic resources. To me, is way too vague. Importantly, in this housing and with any of our pieces, we're looking at affordable housing, but we also want to ensure that we are protecting existing neighborhoods and existing districts that intersect with housing. For example, that last ensure all new residential development and renovations are designed to fit within the natural, historic, and scenic resources, but equally important that they are fit within available infrastructure, including but not limited to drinking water and wastewater. There are two sections in the town that don't have Bristol County Water Authority water or sewer connections. Actually, one of those is that plot of land that came before us next to Frericks Farm. There was not the available existing infrastructure there. And I think it's important that we have that within the comprehensive plan so that it is taken into consideration when we're faced with requirements. This can also be true, for example, in a place like off Serpentine Road or Tuisset Point, where somebody wants to come in and build a 4-bedroom, 5-bathroom house in an area that in a space that previously had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. What that means is it's putting a strain on it would definitely negatively impact the available resources that are there. So,
Well, one way to solve that is to add the word negative before the word impacts. Certainly, I think that brings the scope of this in a little more.
I don't want to say minimize, though. To me, minimize is too. It's a word that doesn't have any power. I mean, I think we want to make categoric statements here that this is what that it fits within those available infrastructure, that it fits within the scale and proportion of an area. Again, I think one of the issues that came up in Water Street was scale and proportion, and we had nothing to use as a definitive means by which we could say, I mean, I think it was brought before us that this is out of scale, it's out of proportion to the immediate area, as well as having matters of historic detailing that were important as well. So to me, the goals need to be expanded to include that our ability to preserve and protect the existing neighborhoods, the character of the town. And this is one of the elements that might appear. So I'm putting that out. I've got some language. I'd like your thoughts on that.
I mean,
We're gonna see this again, is that?
Oh, yeah.
That's the idea, so
Yeah.
maybe you put that in the draft and then we look at what the language.
Well, again, like that, what do you think of that idea, though? That's what I'm saying is this,
well, so I don't know. I understand the reasons for wanting to look out for, sort of a negative draw on resources, but you know, when we're talking about, like you just said, we had no definition of what scale or proportion is, but, you know, I mean, and we all, you know, had differing opinions about it, but the plan that was not approved was gonna result in fewer bedrooms than what's there now. So I don't see how that would have a greater draw in the sewer than what's already there. So, you know, I don't know that that language really accomplishes.
Well,
the
that could be
concerns.
another element though, because certainly whether there were less units in terms of the size, there was not going to be the parking that was available.
Right,
So-
but you were mentioning sewer, so.
Yeah, no, again, well, that's why I'm saying, let's talk about this,
Yeah.
because infrastructure is more than just drinking water and wastewater, it's also available parking.
I just,
Traffic.
So I think that, you know, the emphasis on infrastructure is clearly warranted, because that's what allows you to build in certain areas of this town and not in others. So some acknowledgement that infrastructure is important, whether it's in the goals or someplace else, is probably warranted.
right. But that's gotta be consistent with whatever the current zoning regulations are.
Well, one of the
I mean,
problems
like,
is comprehensive plan drives zoning. We can change, you know, to me, for example, here's a very clear example. A couple wanted to build a house in Tuisset, 3 feet away from their neighbors. A really big house with a lot of bedrooms and bathrooms. When the zoning was confronted with it, they said, not our issue. We talked about the potential for fire spreading through the community, which is a serious problem because there isn't the fire, not our issue. So it's like the form-based code. We need to, the comprehensive plan can drive changes in zoning.
yeah, so I think I recall us having some conversations about that when Bob was here in terms of, you know, do we encourage high efficiency toilets and shower heads and all that sort of stuff, right? To reduce the impact on that stuff. I just don't know that I'm comfortable driving a policy that says we're gonna start controlling whether people can build a 3-bedroom versus a 5-bedroom house.
I'm not,
comfortable with that.
yeah, I'm not saying that. That's why I'm calling it a goal that is available infrastructure that it fits within available infrastructure. I mean, beyond that, we've got to develop a policy and action standards, which would be to establish zoning standards. I mean, that's not a done deal. That's something that has to be worked out in a public forum, you know, where we would say, this seems like a solution to it. I mean, it may in fact not be, it may not go through, but at least we've done due diligence as planners to think about how do you preserve an area. And that's what I think a goal should do. It should be overarching enough to fit in these other elements, these other policy elements that would lead to further protection where you need it and development where it's best suited.
Sure. As long as that considers, you know, what's the current status at any given time of the, you know, for example, the sewer draw. Like if there's no issue with that and its operation.
Yep.
I don't want to see a situation where a board someday says you can't build 4 bedrooms because, you know, we think that is going to draw too much on our wastewater treatment plant, when in fact there's when in fact there's more capacity to go. I don't know that we want to start micromanaging this.
Yeah, I don't, my intent was not to micromanage. On the other hand, I think there is a capacity issue and at any time, I mean, there will be a point at which the sewage treatment plant cannot handle any more development, correct?
I don't know what the current capacity is, but sometimes communities will have, like when a development is proposed, a letter from sewer and water, stating that there is allocation available, we
Capacity.
have capacity in, as part of the review. So
Yeah, I mean, that happened with Tourist.
Tourists are having to build a pumping station.
Right,
Right, yeah, a large project like that. So
right. So it's, I mean, not that we necessarily have a lot more large projects, but that could be a possibility on 136. On Medicom Avenue, these are and even the concept of market of Medicom could conceivably demand increased water, increased sewer. To meet
I'll look
that.
at the other like there's other sections we had started addressing, definitely the choice of water concern, there's in other elements. So I'll
Right.
look back at that language and see what could be
sure, so
utilized here. I mean, I think there might even have been language about a potential moratorium, right? Wasn't there something that we talked about in that?
Or-
What, I gotta have to look at the language, but I mean, we definitely talked about fire protection, but was there was a language about moratorium potentially having to be necessary in the future?
Yeah,
Yeah,
So I have one quick editorial point. We have affordable housing here. Do we want to make that affordable / workforce and make it more inclusive? I mean, we've tried to make that distinction, that there's a
my-
and which,
distinction between affordable and workforce.
well, I don't know that we can do a slash because it's not called workforce. We looked into that before. It's not called workforce by the state, so
Well,
that
but-
won't satisfy the statute.
It's our plan, and they can say they don't like it.
which,
But I think we need to acknowledge that workforce housing is an issue for us as well.
Sure. I think that's fair. I would just think that we should separate workforce from affordable because those could be two different things.
yeah, so it's a comma, not a slash.
so,
Right.
for example, the word attainable housing is utilized. So in the goals, I can see here a couple of goals, the language affordable and attainable housing. So that gets to the workforce housing kind of. So where would you want to add, or I just didn't know what specific
Again, I think you
place.
can find,
in the document where it would be
well, I was trying to put it in
We're
the
talking about-
goals.
in the goals. Okay, yep. So the affordable and attainable housing.
To ensure safe and healthy housing conditions, but also the goal here in terms of affordable housing is to ensure that people can live in the town and work here at the same time. I mean, I think that's, to me, what workforce means. So it's not just to ensure safe and healthy housing conditions, it's to ensure a diverse population, housing for a diverse population of socioeconomic levels.
Right. I mean, the bottom line is you're gonna have a lot of people who, go under the current state regime, get priced out of affordable housing, but still really can't, really have a hard time
Right.
paying for, non-deed restricted housing.
Right. So I think if we put in that socioeconomic diversity, we're being clear that we're not, it's not. And the problem I have with affordable housing, which is we're still dealing with that freaking 10%. And the fact that the comprehensive permit counts for an 80% of an AMI. I mean, isn't that the definition of the affordable housing?
Eligible, good.
Or
The eligibility for the comprehensive
20%
permit.
could be on the low mod chart, up to 120% for for sale units, count on the low mod.
Right, but the measure for that was 80% of AMI. I mean, that's what Liberty Street was coming
rentals.
in for rentals.
Yeah.
That's what they were coming in for. So, again, that whole affordable thing becomes a little hard to. I don't even know what the hell it means. And I don't think they do either.
Sometimes, I mean, using the term in here, we talk about low and moderate income housing. We're talking about those units that are those deed restricted, receive a subsidy, the capital A affordable versus lowercase affordable. But this plan, the housing element and your affordable housing plan, it should discuss affordability in general, not just, like, it does include attainable workforce housing, what that's part of the goals of this document and what you're looking to achieve in town, not just the low and moderate income housing units and your 10%. So it should.
Yeah, so
hopefully
maybe we just
reflect
build
that.
in the two. I guess, I mean, safe and healthy housing conditions as one goal, and then a diverse range of housing options seems to be the same thing. I mean, I don't,
Well, I know, I think that I would say two different things, safe and
Okay.
healthy housing conditions versus diversity of housing, meaning rental and home ownership and condo, like a variety for different stages of life and different household sizes, so. that
okay, so I
there
would say
are
ownership
different
and
size,
rentals
number of
then, maybe?
bedroom units.
Ownership and rentals, or, you know, home ownership and rental and or rentals. Under the second one, promote a diverse range of housing options. From home ownership to rental.
It talks about, well, it says household sizes, incomes and stages
Stage
of
of
life.
life, yeah,
Um,
but we're not saying that everybody's gonna be able to afford a house, we're saying that everybody will be able to afford a place to live.
I
That's
mean,
what
we
we're-
are talking about what you're saying, homeownership and rentals in that term, diverse range of housing options. I don't know if you need to state it in the goals. I know they're a lot, like, you don't have to be that detailed in the goals. They are. You can put that within
Okay,
the next, within the document, it will speak to that, and then you have your policies. Remember, the more detail goes into your policies and
Okay.
action items, so you have your policy statements that help you achieve your goals, so that gets a little more detailed, and then the actual specific action items that can be implemented to advance
okay,
the ins.
well, we
Or
went
goals.
from the bottom up,
Yeah,
so we would. Still keep that established regulations that encourage higher density mixed use. Redevelopment of the Metacom Avenue corridor. That was the third goal.
yeah, so that's specific to your market to Metacom
Right.
concept there. That goal is fairly specific.
And then the last is the one where I felt like we could. That we should include
yeah.
the infrastructure. Language,
Yes, I'll do that.
So we're sort of limiting this to the Metacom Avenue corridor, but that's only what's on the table now. I mean, there was thought that eventually further up Metacom will be doing the same thing. So do we want to limit it just to the Metacom Avenue corridor?
That one specific goal speaks to market to Metacom, but the other four are town-wide.
well, Mike, what you're saying
Yeah.
is that there are other places where we might have higher density mixed use.
Yeah, like the form, I mean, Bob was, the late lamented Bob, was talking about potentially expanding the form-based code down Metacom Avenue. Down beyond the existing corridor that was defined,
Toward 136
or,
or,
towards the Massachusetts border.
right,
North.
yeah,
So I'm saying that here, we're just saying Metacom corridor, and there's a map that will define that. And my guess is we ought to be somewhat broader.
well, and beyond
Yeah.
Medicare of the Metacom Avenue corridor and beyond or other appropriate
Yeah, other
locations.
appropriate areas.
Yeah, I agree. I think that makes sense because it doesn't. I mean, we don't know if Ocean State Job Lot is ever going to become a reality. You know, we do know that there's quite a bit of land on 136 heading out toward 195 that could conceivably work similarly
Yep.
to the Metacom.
That's
area.
my point.
Yeah. Okay, we good with that?
Yeah, something I'm trying to recall from our past discussions is, when we sent over the draft elements, were they okay with this format? I remember I can't remember if they liked the goals in the table. I know that we liked that because it was kind of like heavy hitting. Were they good with that?
They didn't comment on that specific
Mhm.
format. Now it's, communities are pretty free with the format, but
Does the state require us to use this term affordable?
It'd be hard to avoid it. I mean, a lot, if you're required,
I
this is
personally dislike it.
the
There's
afford,
there are much better terms.
yeah.
I prefer the one income indexed, which is really in the end what it is. And you can have income indexed housing with an appendix explaining what that means.
I haven't heard that term before.
In the
actually,
end,
to be
in the end,
honest.
that's what all the
Yeah.
Affordable and evaluations point to, is that it's income indexed.
So it's the state, the requirements for comprehensive plan. This housing element serves also as your affordable housing plan. So that's the term, affordable housing plan, is the state right requirements for local comprehensive plans. And then certainly utilizing that term, low and moderate income housing is that has to be in here because that's part of the requirements as far as what number, what percentage are you at, what units are family units versus, that term will be within there. And then a lot of communities use the term attainable housing or workforce housing. Those are very common terms in comprehensive plans.
My guess is we're not going to re-educate the state at this point, given the fact that there are 14 bills in the hopper dealing with affordable housing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Jim. I don't like it either. I think it's way
You're
too
right.
loose, but on the other hand, we've got, we have the affordable housing, we're using it. I think there are places, where it's important. In another section here, I think it's important to note that 10% goal, and it's on page 5 of 8, they do talk, it does say Warren does not meet the 10% threshold, but I mean, I said before that, an overarching unsupported goal applied across the board, whether it's Providence or Warren, to say that Providence or Cranston is the same as Warren in terms of being able to come up with 10% affordable housing is, stretches logic and good sense. But clearly somebody came up with this and nobody bothered to take a look at it when they passed the legislation. I think we can take issue with that later on in the document. But
Fred, do you
again-
feel like it, there's language in here that it's pretty strong against
Yeah,
that
that's so
policy
true.
already. We have a policy in here, advocate for fair and effective state law and policy to address the affordable housing crisis in Rhode Island, and working with other Rhode Island communities to talk about how the state can more effectively support local housing needs, amendments, including amendments to the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act, and then how Warren would like, there's mention in here about specific changes that could be helpful, like including the vouchers as counting towards your percentage.
Yep. There is in the policies, which is the next, that's where the
Mhm.
somebody on that. It indicates promote and support rehabilitation of existing residential units and the conversion of vacant upper level space to residential use in Census Tract 305 downtown Warren. There isn't anything here about identifying other parts of the town. And Andrea Giles, who was a member of the planning board, I don't know if you folks remember Andrea, anyway, she did a very detailed review of other parts of the town, other buildings that might be well suited to that kind of transformation into residential units. And I think as a policy, we need to expand it beyond just the existing residential units in the vacant upper floors of downtown Warren, that there are other places. For example, I think Andrea identified Liberty Street School as one. And at the time there was pushback that would be too difficult to turn into residences. And in fact, that's going to be coming before us, as as a renovation. So I think we need to a further policy playing off that. I mean, I don't want to get rid of that, but I think we can also say that we are work toward identifying locations throughout the town that would be suitable for residential use.
Yeah, I'm fine with something like that. I mean, I don't really share the state's concern that highlighting market to Medicom in here somehow alienates any other part of the town or obligates us to never look at the rest of the town or in any way suggests that we don't have our eyes on the rest of the town. I mean, this is a large section of the town, so it makes sense to highlight it in the plan. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But if it makes people feel better, I'm also happy to say, hey, our eyes are open to the rest of the town.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a bit of a blinder look at this, you know, in terms of what, you know, as Mike said, you know, we weren't even talking about down 136. We weren't talking about certain places because the solution is the Medicom redevelopment. And realistically speaking, we need to be careful not to put all our eggs in one basket, because that's a huge multi-million-dollar development for that to work. So we need to be able to say, we're identifying and will continue to identify areas within the town that could conceivably be used for affordable housing. I mean, that will, you know, when I've talked to Ben and Tony, that's important when we're dealing with the comprehensive permits. You know, if we're saying everything's going to go into the Medicom.
Because I don't think we're saying everything's going to go into market.
No, but we're not saying we're not, by its omission, we are, because we didn't put in something about the fact that we are looking at other areas
Again, I mean, I disagree with that interpretation, but if it makes everyone feel better that we're addressing other areas of the town, that's
but I don't agree. It's not a matter of feeling better. It's a matter of, you know, we're being responsible planners by saying, if there's something that's missing, if there's a hyper focus on one area and you're ignoring all the rest, then we're not doing our jobs properly. It's not just about feeling good. It's about making sure that we're looking at the town as a whole and not taking one potential solution as the be all and end all. And that's without having that, identifying other areas in town. If I were an applicant, I'd say, hey, they put all their eggs in the Medicom basket. What the hell?
Yeah, I've said that's fine. I'm fine with adding in that kind of language. I just wanted to express that just the way it's written.
So I had the same thought that there are some places in town where housing is possible. I mean, there's the big mill building where the health club is now, for instance, that's underutilized. And there may be others. I mean, schools that go out of business. Bob's view was it was more expensive to renovate than to build. But I don't think we should preclude it.
Right.
Also, this Medicom project area noted there probably needs to be expanded again. We don't want to limit it just to the Medicom project area in the second.
Well, I think we could say that initially, because the logic behind that was if you've got the form-based code, then a developer is going to come in and look at that and say, I can do this.
That's okay. Yeah.
So I would just say, I hear what you're saying. But I wouldn't, you know, I don't want to,
Yeah,
I'm not throwing out Medicom for sure.
yeah, so I think adding an additional policy and action or more than one action on that, based on the discussion, just focusing on, and this is an important policy that is in most comprehensive plans, but just, you know, suitable location as a policy, making sure housing development occurs in suitable locations, speaking to your earlier point about available infrastructure, but also to the inventory of other parcels in town that are vacant or underutilized. So I'll add a policy about citing suitability and then an action about that inventory specific, create an inventory of parcels that could be potential locations of.
So I have one other quick question here. There's nothing on transportation in the policies. And yet we're very conscious that if Medicom is to come about, we need to negotiate with Rhode Island Public Transit Authority for reasonable transportation. Is it reasonable to put something in there that highlights that relationship?
So, yes, and I think it is mentioned within the section on market to Medicom, there is a, let me pull that up.
Well, I was thinking of putting something in the policy section.
Well,
Yeah, so
it
there-
really fits within transportation, but,
It will be within transportation. In the policy, there's an action item about
Okay.
transit-oriented development, so that's getting to the point of public bus service, but
It relates to housing as well, doesn't it, though? I mean.
yeah, for sure.
yes, and it's in here about, in the narrative, there's specific statement about state partnerships in, upgrading Metacom Avenue, drainage, public transit service in the narrative. But as far as, so a policy statement for suitability, are you saying maybe within where locations that are suitable, such as those that have access to
Yeah,
public
something like that.
transportation?
Yeah, to traffic and again, the infrastructure, I think. The carrying it over from the goal.
Okay.
Fair and effective state law, right?
Question, that's slide 6, page 6. It gives this definition of a form-based code. And it differentiates it that it's by using physical form as opposed to, usage. Is that something that would make sense to bring up front in terms of a goal, or is that just implicit in there? Is it?
Oh, so because it's mentioned as you mean just in order, like because it's referenced here, form-based code as an implementation action in the table, but then it's kind of defined later in the document? Are you saying bring that? You like that language and want what?
Yeah, I mean, when I read through the goals on page 1,
Right.
like the
Oh, in the goal.
idea of form-based code isn't like, I just think it's a powerful concept. So
Okay.
I wasn't sure if it would make sense for us to. A goal of this is to bring about form-based code for the reasons that are identified.
Yeah, I mean, I support that. It will also appear in our land development section as well, and
Okay.
in infrastructure. But it's this to me, the form-based code is the kind of the keystone of any of the developments that we're looking at. I mean, I was talking to a fellow from England who's doing this in a town called Maidenhead. He's working to revitalize the town center through this concept of form-based code, because in the past, it was always commercial here and residential there. And a lot of the towns in England are dying because they're no longer, retail has no, it's not the magnet that it once was. So they're building these places that are built around not only residences, but the services that residents need, like grocery stores. And in this case, he was even talking about a hospital, the kinds of things that would create a community within an area that has lost its meaning in the old sense of zoning.
So maybe, yeah, I'll go back to the draft land use element and take a look at the goals there. So maybe I'll strengthen or put a little more focus on some of that, the form-based code, as looking for alternatives to conventional zoning and having less focus on the actual land use and more the urban form, like having that kind of language that you like within maybe the goals of the land use element there.
Yeah. I mean, I think the more times that it's mentioned, the more the more integrated each element is, the more sense it makes.
Yes.
There's a thing here. Additional challenges and strategies on page 6. And it said, with the exception of the Metacom Avenue project area, there are limited opportunities within Warren for significant residential development. To Mike's point,
Yeah, so I'll add some of the conversation we just had about.
yeah, I think to expand that, so we're not,
Inventory.
again, hyper focusing on one area only. I appreciate the folks who are here. We will have a public comment period on this before this thing ever sees the light of day. So I'm ordinarily I'd ask for comments, but we're working through this now. And
That's one procedural question.
Yeah.
You're discussing the housing section now. I heard that tonight we're going to discuss the historic section as well. Is that-
next, we're looking at that for the next meeting.
April, I was told put it on April agenda.
And
Yeah, Give
ideally,
you a
I'd
little
like to
time
do
to-
that. I mean, that was one where, because we have so many stakeholders and the Warren Historic District, that we felt that we might have more of a give and take. And also have people review it first beforehand and come in with specific thoughts on it. So,
Could I ask Allison, what were the 3 sections that were already submitted?
historic and cultural was one, natural resources and not housing, we're just don't have, wasn't land, we have land use drafted, but that wasn't sent. Housing has drafted now, that wasn't sent. What was the third?
So facilities, services.
The only facilities and services, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
And are those available online or public, including the state comments? Or
I'm not sure if they're on the town website, but that's something we could do. We'll, yeah, we can, and I want to provide the planning board too, kind of the status
Shouldn't
of
we
each
go
of the
through one
elements.
more iteration, given the state's comments before we post them?
Well, I mean, they're public documents now. I mean, they're drafted.
Okay.
It's okay. I mean,
as long
I
as they're
started,
public, yeah. I mean,
it's just, it's gonna say it's a rough draft of those.
and again, ideally, we want to make this as inclusive as possible. And then really, it's just, I'm
Yeah,
fearful, having gone through 3 months of hell, but no, the goal really is and has been all along, to ensure that we're looking at this. We're hoping to get the state sign off on this to some degree, so that we don't go, so that we have a base and that we're operating out of that. And we have something to bounce ideas off, because we don't want to go through this a number of times. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Just one quick question. So I'm on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund board. Is there any communication between the board and what you're proposing in your comprehensive plan? I mean, we have $250,000 that we're tasked with developing a grant program for affordable housing.
Yeah, that's noted. Have you seen this? Okay, yeah.
We don't have the same background, obviously, that Allison does, or that you all do, but maybe some commentary, maybe some communication between our.
Well, that is the intent. I mean, what we're doing now is, because we had this really long hiatus in terms of developing the comprehensive plan, wanted to come back and take a look at one and kind of reacquaint ourselves with the process. Once we do that, this will be posted, and we would welcome, encourage, seek that kind of input, because it will not go out without having a full public review and comment on this. That's definite. So, and this is mentioned, but I think when, once you get a chance to look at it, and our goal here is to make it as close to what we would like to have as possible, but I know we're gonna miss stuff. It's too big, too broad. There are too many elements in this town. I mean, for a small town, it's extraordinary, the number of pieces that have to fit together. And I don't trust myself or this board to handle that.
All right.
No, I mean, that's part of the process, we just don't have.
I just had a comment that when we did the plan 30 years ago, we sort of did it in reverse. We got the input from the community first. With all the stakeholders, Chamber of Commerce, historic, natural land trust, et cetera, with all the vision, the ideas, the dreams, et cetera. Brought that to the planning board, the consultant, who then machinated all that into a working document based on the state guide plan stuff and formulated it that way so that it was rooted in the community, not just from the planning board. So
Yeah, I mean, I can see the value in both, and particularly now, having seen where there were weaknesses in the past comprehensive, you always hope to build on the shoulders of others, I mean, we've used that comprehensive plan, very effectively at times, and other times we felt like, wow, we didn't get what we needed out of that. But, I think the result is going to be the same, that people they'll participate and have a buy-in, or they won't participate, and, we'll move forward, but we'll do the best we can here. The other element was and this may fit probably better within the historic, was the demolition ordinance.
Yeah, you mentioned that, right?
I don't know if that's something that would go within housing as a reinforcement. I mean, very specifically, we would be asking for a rewrite of the demolition ordinance, because based on our meeting relative to 119 and 113, there was too much. It wasn't specific enough, and that was a problem for both the applicant and for the folks who were opposing it. Without clarity, it becomes a war of words. Housing, to me, is part of that. I don't know, it's a zoning issue. I mean, for example, how do two residential buildings go for 30 years without being enforced? I mean, is there something we can put within this element that would strengthen the town's position on neglect that would lead to the kind of situation that we have there? Can you think of anything, Ben, or?
I think that's actually one of the issue. I think that town does have the tools in place. It's just maybe a better mechanism of community reporting conditions of certain properties to the town, and town has not only a building official but a solar compliance official.
Right.
I think they're up to 150 thus far this year. They're pretty, they're out there. I think that if community could, contribute to that, eyes on the property and stuff, and then the town is not follow through.
Yeah, but I mean, I've heard complaints about the fact that, there's kind of a continual ball rolling down the hill, So that's something, an issue. But again, I'm not sure that fits within housing.
Well, it does if you're talking about demolishing residential structures and.
Right.
But, it might be more suited in historic.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's necessarily
I
a
think it's
goal,
mentioned
but I think
in
it's a policy perhaps where we would say it would be the town would rigorously enforce
Housing codes.
how, yeah, rigorously enforce housing codes. To ensure, the maintenance of the character and of the town. I mean, that's essentially what we're
Well, and it
looking
goes
for.
to the goal of ensuring safe and healthy housing conditions. That's in here, so it having more language.
Yeah, I
Policy
just,
and action
safe and
items.
healthy is okay, but I also want to look at,
No, I'm saying add language, because.
yeah,
you
yeah.
need to Put, you should have policies and actions that support those goals, so we
Okay.
need to,
yeah,
probably, that would.
I see what you're
help
saying.
In saying that, okay, that's our goal, and this is how we achieve it.
Great.
These.
Anything else? Pop up, come to mind?
So just on tracking that last comment, that would be something that would be identified in page 2 in the policies kind of thing. That's for your rigorous enforcement of.
Yeah, I think we were talking about adding it into like the policy and action within that table with some language to that.
Cool.
So one of the issues that sort of reacted to is here, we talk a lot about things, but there's no specific strategies on rentals about how to encourage an appropriate range of rental properties. I mean, we seem to always be wanting to build things or renovate them, but I don't know, rental seems to be a key aspect. I mean, you look at the data on how many owned units there are and how many rentals. Do we want to say more about rentals?
Well, that's what I thought in the second goal, promote a diverse range of housing options, including home ownership and rentals.
But policy wise, I was thinking,
Yeah.
and I don't know what that is, but
Unfortunately, I don't know that people are not who rent who have rental units, they are not obliged to tell the town how much they're charging, correct?
Correct, yeah, that's correct.
yeah, well, I can see that.
So we really don't have a way of making it so that, you could say, unless you could do some kind of a tax incentive, that would benefit somebody by keeping it.
Too complicated.
Yeah, but that's essentially as much power as we would ever have, because that's
Well,
So
you're
why
saying
is
to increase the supply of rentals, is that what, or the rents, the rate?
No, I'm saying the supply.
Supply, he's speaking to supply. Is that an issue more? I mean, you have quite a bit of rental compared to other communities in Rhode Island. Is that, because it's in this ordinance, I mean, in the draft, it talks about 7 in the state and percentage of rentals versus ownership, single family. So is that a goal to increase the supply of rentals in Warren? I don't know if that's been, if it is, there are strategies for that, to increase the supply of rentals.
yeah, I mean,
But
I
didn't know that.
to me, that's what affordable housing most of the time is. I mean, it's rentals, not home ownership,
And the
So,
market's-
yeah, I don't know. I can tell you right now, I mean, I think it should be homeownership. I mean, I'm looking for homes myself. I own a multifamily, but I'm looking at the prices of single family homes. And just like the rest of the world, well, country, they're still through the roof, right? I mean, to live in a town like Warren, you're looking at $400,000. That's ludicrous. So to the extent we can, I think we should promote affordable homes as well as apartments. Not everybody wants to live in an apartment.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not saying that we're not looking for affordable homes, because we are, but you also want to have, I mean, this is this whole issue with the definition of affordable, I mean, it's used 10% affordable housing. When they are referring to that, that's a very specific threshold that has to be met in terms of how much can be charged. And I mean, I think you can do that for housing, but I think and that should be in there, but rentals are going to be much easier to meet that threshold with, I would think. If you,
I mean, I don't know.
there's just no place to build houses, you know. If we're, again, I don't wanna make it an either or. I think what Mike was saying, if I'm correct, is that we want to place an emphasis on rentals as a means of helping achieve an affordable balance in one.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying, just like, you know, we were speaking about earlier, it should go beyond just the goals of meeting the legal definition of affordable housing. We should be looking at how do we make it so that the people that fall just outside that income index, which is the better, more accurate
Right.
term, can attain, you know, housing, whether that's an apartment or a house. Because, you know, I mean, that's something we don't want to neglect. We don't want to say we're just steering towards making it so that people that fall under an income threshold,
Right.
you know, come here and live. We need a diverse, you know, population.
Well, and I think that's the workforce housing, whether it's, you know, a lawyer or a cop.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, I don't even know what workforce, like, am I not part of the workforce because I'm an attorney?
no, not at all.
That makes
Right.
sense.
No, I agree. I mean, it's like middle class,
Right.
the middle class crunch, you know, if you're
Right.
rich, you get into college. If you're
Yeah.
poor, you get into college. If you're middle class, you have to
Right.
sell your shirt, you know, I mean.
Or more.
So, yeah, I mean, I think. I don't see the two things as being,
No, you want to
in
promote both, of
opposition,
course,
right.
yeah.
One thing I would like to see is on page 4 of 8, it indicates. Existing residentially zoned areas. And it says village business, waterfront district. Special district. And what is not included is the village overlay, which is Tuisset Point. That's considered a village overlay, and it's zoning is accordingly changed.
So also village, rural business is missing here. That's actually one of our
Yeah.
zones. Rural business is one of our zones. And,
So,
you know,
yeah,
we list the dwellings in all of the residential areas. But I'm wondering if you want to include the dwelling requirements in village waterfront and rural. The dwelling, I mean, what's allowed there?
In the, sorry, one of the districts, so we have
It-
in the land use element, all the districts, zoning districts included, a description of all of those. This seems to be kind of a selection of those districts that are more residentially focused or primarily residential.
But,
So
but
we'll add-
residential is allowed in village business waterfront district and the rural, are they not?
It's probably allowed in everyone, well, just about, but, and allowed use in most of them, if not all.
Yeah, I think we should have the rural business, and I think we need the village overlay.
Okay,
And the village overlay, you could note that Tuisset Point has no public water, sewage, or fire protection. Which is. And I think, I don't know what the deal is with Serpentine Road. Which doesn't have water, or sewage. And I would assume fire protection either. That was part of the whole reason for the grant that the town recently got for fire prevention. But I don't know what that Serpentine Road area is called. Is it what it falls under? But that's something that should be included.
as far as included, as far as,
Within that existing residentially zoned areas, I mean, I think, you know,
is there also a goal or is there interest in expanding service? I mean, there's no water there. Or is there an action item to address the issue that you said, are there issues there that need to be addressed?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we need to, be aware of capacity, you know,
Mhm.
I mean, I know what the capacity is of the Lewis Point, you know, community water system, but outside of that, there have been significant developments that haven't taken the water into consideration, you know, wells being dropped, the water view development off Chase Road, for example, is, you know, in that area. And I have nightmares about what's going to happen to those people down below them, because no thought was given to what the capacity of the water was there when that thing was built. And every house that goes up there is a McMansion, so it's a real draw on the water above where the existing houses were. So again, it's like understanding and protecting the capacity of those particular areas.
Okay.
Sewage is the same thing. I mean, it's like, even if you've got a septic system and it's working, you know, there's only so many you can put into any given area based on wells and proximity to the water.
Mhm.
I had a question, which is, I looked in my files. Is there a map that's going to accommodate these that will show where the different ones are?
A map of what?
There's-
The
there's
different, what?
zones.
We have a zoning map of
Yeah.
existing land use map, future land use map, what specific map, we can add map, we can certainly include additional maps, but to show what.
I guess I can't find it in my file, like when I want to see where the R40 and R30 and
Oh,
R20 and
yeah.
R15s are in town.
Yeah, there's a zoning, there
Yeah,
was
yeah.
prepared a
Need
zoning
to be
map.
called zoning
Yeah.
map. Okay. Open search zoning, thank you.
Great. Anything else?
I was looking back at the comments from the, whatever it is, the Department, Division of Statewide Planning. And I know that they said a comment that they spread across all draft chapters is they said, please include responsible parties for each implementation action item within the municipal comprehensive plan. So, I'm guessing they wanted that under like the goals, you know, the page 2 of who's
Yeah, so that's,
responsible for it.
okay, so that's good, you do have it, so it was circulated, that is a requirement, so within your, it's called the implementation program, so it's now a standalone element of the comprehensive plan, so
Oh,
at the end, there'll be the table, which would have all your policies, your action items, your responsible party, and your time frame. So that hasn't been, the responsible parties haven't been assigned or identified yet. I figured, wait, till maybe we can start doing that, but include another column that would have the responsible party, and those would be, you know, planning board, the you know, different boards or staff members or town council. Typically, those are the different type of responsible parties that we're speaking to, someone within local government or local board.
gotcha. I can see that making a lot of sense, having it be a standalone element, because then when you want to go revise it, you don't have to revise the whole plan, but just the table that has the time frame of the associated parties.
Yeah,
It's prudent.
I think part of it was also, so it's more of a document that's kind of, it does become more of a useful tool. So when you
Yeah.
have it all in a spreadsheet that you can interact with and kind of sort by responsible party, sort by time frame. So when the town wants to evaluate how, when you're going to implement the comprehensive plan or provide, there is a required 5-year implementation report that's now required. So you would then update that table with
Right.
each of the
You
actions
want them to
where it
assume
hasn't been
that's true.
implemented or not. So if it's partially implemented or no, we decided we're not going to implement that, or so then you kind of submit that implementation report with your implementation tables for each of the actions. So but it is helpful in implementing it. You can kind of sort it by responsible party, the planning board, you know, in a year, like after it's been adopted, a year later, you know, reach out to all the responsible parties saying, hey, how are you doing in implementing these action items?
Okay, one follow-up, as I look to some of the draft elements, I could probably look and see which ones, but they, under the policy, it had like a designator, like HC1 or something like that. Is that, are we planning to do that to give the traceability so that we have?
I think when there's a repetitive policy or action item, sometimes I do that where I'll just put, like reference that it's identical to what was put in another element. Like, for example, this policy here, the first policy says LEU policy 1. So I'm just kind of noting it's the same as the land, this policy, and this element is the same as the land use policy. But at the end, when everything has been drafted, there has to be a unique identifier for every policy and action item. So, and it's,
That's
there's
what I-
no, yeah, so that it can be referenced easily.
Now, once you've redone this, what is your, do we look at it again or do you bring it to statewide planning?
I think this is, yeah, I would give this back to you. There's still, I think, some more things to add in here. Housing is one of the kind of heaviest, the requirements are greater in this element, so I still feel like there needs to be a little bit more added, and I can give it back to you for next meeting.
Okay,
I think what's trying to think process wise, land use, did you go through, I had drafted land use, but that was months, I think it was before the planning board, that section, if you recall. If that's ready, I know you saw it, I wasn't at that meeting though. There might be other elements we could send, and I can send, well, we're talking about historic, I mean, maybe just hold off till the next month.
oh,
after
yeah,
April.
no, I'm not, in no rush.
And then we could, send back this, we have the 3 sections they've already reviewed, but I can address those comments. And then there was, so land use and housing after that. The only 2 that haven't been, it's transportation, economic development remain, was the last 2. So, but pretty
Okay.
well drafted the other sections.
Well, if we could get this one
Then-
back with the
Yeah.
comments in it and,
Yes.
you know, equally and perhaps more importantly, historic,
Yeah,
you know, well in advance of the April meeting.
yeah, that's already been, that's
Yeah.
drafted and I started address, so I,
Very good. And then that would also be made public as well,
Yeah.
so that folks would get a chance to look at that and we could even, I would think, encourage comment in writing prior to the meeting, you know, similar to how you would do
Yes.
testimony.
I will submit, maybe even from the commission.
Yeah, no, that would be helpful to have beforehand.
yeah,
I don't know what else is going to be on the agenda for that meeting.
right, application wise, there's nothing currently that's been submitted to the planning board for application.
that would
as
be
of
really
at
great
this
if
point.
there was nothing.
Next couple of weeks, but
Yeah, and again, we've committed to special meetings for this to move this thing forward. So I'd rather, you know, I don't want to be here every other week. But
I'm not gonna be here every other week.
yeah, no, I don't want to be here twice a month. But again, I think, you know, that's ideally we'd be able to deal with that at the April meeting. Both, you know, any thoughts that we had about additions to the housing and then specific to historic, what changes we want.
and I could probably get going on the other, because this, yeah, historic is drafted, but we'll await comments. And then this, I'll address these changes and then get started on either transportation or economic development for your review next month. So there should be
Okay.
some, I want to have more material to review, so,
All right,
and then we'll have a package ready
well,
after that meeting.
let's motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,